Regina, it is true that women engineers stand or account for 13% of the population of engineers in this country. And I have seen this journey grow. When I joined IEK in 1999, the women population was at 3%. We have grown to 13%, and this growth is has come up based on the measures IEK has put in place to encourage the girl child to take engineering at the high school level or the secondary school level now. We also have programs for the university where we mentor women who are taking engineering, because at times, even when they graduate with engineering and they're looking for jobs and there are no jobs, what happens is that some organizations actually convince our women engineers then to shift career, to go to financial, to work in the banks and things like that. But once IEK has realized that, we have a mentorship program that where the senior engineers, more seasoned engineers, hold the hands of the younger engineers from university so that we mold them and encourage them to actually work in this very exciting profession.
Very well said. That's I mean, going for STEM, encouraging the girl child to take up a STEM subjects in primary as well as high school. Yeah, starting from a nascent age, so to speak. But we also have a problem, or rather engineers have brought out the issue that yes, they have trained as engineers, but they are not employed or working as engineers. One of the proposals that was made, I think in day 2, was to have the government institute quotas for local engineers across mega projects. What is your take on this proposal, and can it work given that PPPs is one of the models that government is taking up, but when we look at the Procurement Act, it leaves out PPPs when it comes to the 40% local presence of engineers and such or other works. How do we navigate that?
Okay, thank you, Regina, for that very important question. And I think I want to bring the context of the global perspectives in this topic. We have seen programs where we are talking of Kenyans going to work overseas, or rather talk of Africans really going to look for better jobs overseas. What kind of jobs are they going to look for? And why is it so? I've had the privilege to travel to a few countries, and what is so clear is that countries will only import people to work in fields where they have less of their people who can work in those areas. And in most cases, they spare the top expertise jobs for their own. So you hear our people going out to be, cleaners, caregivers, and basically, I would say, manual physical jobs. Now, in our case, in most of the African countries, the opposite is true. We tend to bring more of the specialized people. For me to go and work outside the country as an engineer is really a tough nut to crack and navigate. Except the very expertise people in specific fields who are just being poached. But I just can't go and ask for jobs. In this country, what we need to do is actually adopt a Kenyan focused agenda. Let us first focus on utilizing all the local experts that we have before we can bring in everyone else. Now, the PPP model, which is being fronted by government, and not just Kenya, this is really something that is happening all over the world. But then there's a simple principle we need to adopt as we go into this PPP model, that the PPP model is going to happen in Kenya. And at the end of the day, in as much as the private investors are bringing in financial resources into Kenya, eventually they're going to reap some profits out of it. Otherwise, they will not be coming. So what does that mean? Eventually, the Kenyan taxpayer will pay back that money. This is now where the catch comes in. We want to ensure that Kenyans are employed in these jobs. Now, what can be done to ensure that that is done? It is important that before we enter into a PPP arrangement with any partner, we need to first skim around for the jobs within the PPP that are going to be created and map out which jobs can be done by Kenya. And believe you me, we have enough resources in Kenya, especially engineering expertise, to do these jobs.
Now, Engineer Keter, let me stop you at that point and bring Engineer Ogut into this conversation. There's been those who've been saying that we are having a staffing problem because we do not have qualified engineers. What is your take to that?
Qualified engineers?
Oh, yes.
We have them, Regina. And it depends on what you're looking for. It depends on the funding model for the specific project. Yesterday, the chair of EBK mentioned that in the projects, they want a specific clause in Bill number 1 that provides opportunities for engineers so that interns are actually trained in those projects and they earn a living from that. Regina, when I campaigned as the second vice president for the position of second vice president at IEK, that was one of my campaign targets. And I'm happy that somebody somewhere listened and has run away with it. What does that mean is that we will have opportunities for engineers to be employed. Now we talk of PPPs, public-private partnerships. Even the contracts that we have locally, it is the private sector that is actually investing under different arrangement where government is actually procuring their services. So if we can have that put in the project, it is already actually being practiced by Kenha, by Kura, and what that means is that then our younger engineers are assured of a training so that they become qualified and competent from a construction perspective, and also if they can work with the consultants. But what is so important, this 40% local content has been there for a period of time. It is a statement on paper. And I want to say that where we have failed is that we have not been able to monitor and ensure it is actually being implemented. So that you find that, yes, if you go to a specific project, I may not want to mention one that I visited, where you find that, yes, you have 40% content or even more of the locals, but this 40%, where are they? This 40% on the skilled, on the project, they are more or less, will I say, unskilled? Not
unskilled
really,
labor.
yes, unskilled labor. Yes, you understand?
That engineer, now as you work to respond to me, then who should monitor this? Because what I'm hearing is that yes, it is there, but we are lacking capacity in the implementation when it comes to the monitoring aspect.
I have challenged, one, there is the regulator who must ensure that that government policy is actually being effected. And the regulators, from my perspective, would be the National Construction Authority and Engineers Board of Kenya. They could have tried in their own way, but beyond that, we engineers on those projects must give them information so that based on that information, they can actually make informed decisions. So you'll find that when we do the progress monthly reports on a construction project, then we need to, there is a chapter that actually talks about the labor content. It is at that point that you must report, and the regulators must ensure that that practice, that information is shared with them so that every month, and even beyond the regulator, we have the head of public service. Up there, he needs to ensure that for all projects that we are reporting on, that 40% content is actually reported on. And if it is reported on and that information gets to that very high office in the country, then contractors, consultants, engineers will take the 40% local content, and even the procurement specialists, because I know they are supposed to also report on that, they will take that issue to the next level. Thank you.
I like the way you've put it, is that we are practicing the 40% local content, but not necessarily on skilled labor. We're focusing on the unskilled labor. Still in this particular front, how then do we gravitate, or rather move our innovations from the lab to the market? Because we've seen young engineers demonstrate quite their capacities in the last 2 days we've seen here. How are we helping them get those innovations to the market? The challenge of commercialization. Engineer Keter.
Yeah, thank you, Regina. Maybe before that, I want to add something small on the question of how do we do it?
Okay.
Because I have some experience where I come from, and I work in the energy sector. I work for KenGen. And a few years when we had, in the 90s, when we had serious droughts and we had a lot of power rationing, KenGen management and the government, actually with the support of the government, thought of alternative ways of getting secure and reliable energy. And the idea of geothermal, which has been in our country for a long time, came up. Then there's the aspect of exploration and drilling. In those days, during those days, a lot of that work was being done by foreign expatriates from, China, the US, Italy, New Zealand, and the other places. But the company embarked on a serious capacity building problem, letting our engineers work alongside these experts and also sending them out for training. As we speak today, we do all our geoscientific surveys by our local experts. The drilling is done 100% by our experts. The operations and maintenance of our power plants is done 100% by our engineers and experts. Now, the question I'm trying to answer is, we have skilled experts in this country.
We do.
So how do we go about it? It's not enough to just talk about 40%. We need to break it down to, out of these 100% of the jobs, when we say 40%, what exactly do we mean? And we actually need to itemize that in the contracts that we enter into. It goes all the way to the point of saying 40% of what is going to be used in the project should be
locally sourced
materials. We have seen projects where foreign contractors bring food in containers and disguised as materials for the project. So we've got to be very deliberate on this. The other way of going out to solve this is we need to bring the right stakeholders at the negotiation table. When we are negotiating for this PPP, we need engineers. We need the engineering body, for instance, to be represented so that we are able to map out, we say, this expertise we have, this expertise we have. In terms of looking for work permits for the foreigners, this is done by the immigration department. We need engineers there to vet and say, on this, we are not admitting anyone. On this, we are not admitting anyone. Now, talk of innovation. Coming back to your question.
Before even you get to innovation, you've touched on a matter that is quite debatable and quite current right now. Kenya finds herself in a crux, so to speak. A lot of criticism in the direction that government has been taking when it is looking for private investors to invest. One is the case of the Adani Group here. From maybe your personal capacity and experience, are engineers or is our skilled labor included, when we're sitting down and having these conversations? Because we've had the proposed deal to expand JKIA that will require engineers. We also have the one that has been stopped by the court, so we'll not talk about that because that is sub judice. But then let's look at JKIA expansion and the role that engineers, our local engineers, if any, are going to get in this particular partnership? Have you been included? I mean, as an institution, are you part and parcel of that conversation? And what do you think about that, Engineer Kater?
Of course, the Institution of Engineers of Kenya is not part of the negotiations and discussions that had gone place into that deal. There may be engineers in those institutions also. I have not seen the nitty-gritties of the details of that contract. But one thing that I know for sure, our engineers can handle probably up to 70–80% of those technical jobs. The problem comes in here, and it boils down squarely on negotiation. Any investor, any country will have the interests of their people at heart. When they come to bring in their venture capital, they will say they are bringing in their technology, but behind the scenes, they are also bringing or creating jobs for their people. This is what we need to understand.
And we'll pick it up from there after this particular break. We take a quick breather. We are having a conversation on what we can do going forward when it comes to building capacity, local capacity among our engineers, looking at the available investment opportunities. We'll be right back. Do not go away. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about building capacity among our local engineers, looking at the available opportunities and the challenges therein. This is happening on the sidelines of the ongoing 31st IEK International Convention that is taking place in Shanzu, Mombasa County. Now, let's pick it up from that, from the first Vice President, IEK Engineer Harrison Keter. You said that as far as you are concerned,
yes,
engineers are capable.
Yes.
Yes. And the numbers are just right when it comes to taking up local mega projects. And we were talking about, you know, the conversations around the Adani projects and such, especially under JKI.
Yes.
I want to bring in the second Vice President, IEK Engineer Christine Ogut. I saw you nodding. Maybe you can add up to that and also now bring up the other issue that engineers have raised, that local engineers not only want to be included in these projects, but also want to be remunerated right. To you.
Thank you very much. On the PPP projects, what we really need to do is to break down what we want as a country from a PPP perspective in terms of if it is expertise, we have this expertise. What expertise is the PPP providing that, one, we can work as a joint venture with them. Two, we can also build our own capacity. And three, we understand our local problems. So we need to break it down into various components so that it is very clear. One of the things that we also need to do for the PPPs is actually to look at this period that we are being given of 30 years. At what point does the PPP owner break even on his investment? If he breaks even after 10 years, and in most PPPs, that is actually what happens, is that then the 20 years, if you've given him 30 years, the 20 years, he's a happy man all the way to the bank because he is making a kill on the investment. We also need to be deliberate and say that as a country, can we invest? If an investor after 10 years has recouped his investment, why are we giving 30 years? So can we also form our own PPPs that we as a government can actually invest in? You'll find like the Chinese companies that are actually coming, even the one that is on the expressway, 49% owned by the locals in China, 51% owned by the Chinese government. So they're actually reinvesting in their own
of local PPPs.
Yes,
so that we can also take part or rather build capacity among local private sector.
Now the other question you talked about, remuneration. What is a good package for an engineer?
You tell me, what is it? Because when I
And
had
why
the
I'm
IEK
asking, what is a good package for engineers is when you go onto those projects, you find that that specific international engineer who is working in Kenya under similar conditions like our own engineers is being paid a higher package than our own. And yet, because this is a local project anyway, this is a project being done in Kenya, in the spirit of equity, you find that then you begin asking yourself, what is so special about this engineer from out there that is earning much more? And I've seen that even on consultancies, you find that the lead consultant, because they're coming from Europe, even if it's a joint venture and they have locals, the consultant then is being paid much more than our own engineers. We have our scale of fees that actually, even the ones of the PPP, need to appreciate that and pay our own based on those scale of fees.
Pay for work done.
Yes.
Pay for work done.
Yes.
Not who does it, but pay for work
Why I
done.
speak pay our own,
Yes.
our own engineers,
Yes.
our local engineers. As much as they're being paid for work done, they must also get value for money. And this is an investment that the country has done. So when you come to Kenya, look at our scale of fees and pay comparatively. If anything, pay higher than that. We will be very happy.
Indeed,
Thank
it
you.
will, it will be like a reinvestment, Buy
Yeah.
Kenya, build Kenya. Now, in that particular spirit of Buy Kenya, build Kenya, the regulator has been pursuing the Washington Accord.
Yes.
Maybe a status report from where we are and how it is going to change the dynamics, or open up the world in the scheme of work for engineers. Engineer Keter.
Okay, thank you, Regina. On the Washington Accord, the regulator is really making quite some progress. We are looking at attaining interim accreditation by June 2025. Right now, the regulator is working on a journey of fulfilling the requirements for accreditation, and we had actually the chairman and the CEO of IBK allude to that. We also had our Nigerian brothers who already got theirs last year, so they are supporting Kenya and working with us. So we have countries working with us on that journey. And what I want to say is that this just demonstrates that Kenyan experts meet the requirements for international standards. That is the bottom line. But let me come to something that is very dear to me: patriotism. Pending bills. And I want to relate it to pending bills. We have a scenario where, as a country, we are quick and very keen to fulfill our debt obligations internationally. But what are we doing to our local debt obligations? We are not paying our local contractors. And yet, these are the people who are employing Kenyans. It means, therefore, that our Kenyans who are employed by our local contractors are fired. They lose jobs, they lose livelihoods. It means that our local contractors and consultants cannot grow and expand their businesses. Instead, what do? They actually shut down. People get disillusioned. They go into depression. This is a passionate appeal I want to make to government, that if the government really loves her people, they have to clear this business of pending bills. I would rather we stop investing on any new infrastructure project and sort out the pending bills. And then after that, we can go for the big infrastructure projects, especially where the contribution of government is a bit high. But then the better model even would be, let us balance, do some major infrastructure projects, but also budget sufficiently to sort out our people.
The pending bills. I can see it's quite passionate because we have 2 minutes. Is that your clarion call? Can we say that effectively that is your message that Engineer Keter you have for the government?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, Christine Ogut, adding on to that, and you'll be the one to close this conversation for us. Take it away.
On pending bills, and I hope the CS at the Treasury will get this message. What is our plan to... If I were money is dedicated, I would have a plan to ensure that just the way they have set aside money to pay the commitments for the loans they have borrowed, in a similar manner, set aside monies to pay the pending bills so that you just know this is how much is coming, and beyond that, also set aside money for projects so that there is a balance between paying what is pending, paying the loans, and motivate the Kenyans to pay taxes.
Okay. Very well said. We have been joined by none other than the first Vice President of IEK, that is Engineer Harrison Keter. Thank you very much for your time. And next to him is the second Vice President of the IEK, that is Engineer Christine Ogut. A clarion call to powers that be to relook and have a Kenyan-centric policy when it comes to job opportunities and clear the current pending bills before taking up other mega projects so that we can grow economically and socially. I'm Regina Manyara. I hand you back to Broadcasting House. We are live from Shanzu, Mombasa County, where we're keeping tabs on the deliberations in the 31st IEK International Convention. Over to you.